Hi there, it's late at night, very tired, and so done with doing battle with Adobe Summer. There has sprung up a very annoying problem. I know I usually insert photos of the book covers that I'm recommending. It is turning out to be this ginormous pain in my ass to do it, so there won't be any book covers this time. I'll try to insert as many as I can into the thumbnail, but it ain't working this time. The books will still be listed down in the video description below, so please, keep reading. Bye. Hi there, welcome back. Long time no see. If you're new here, my name is Summer Cannon. I am a horror writer, and more importantly, especially for this case, I am a horror fan. And again, if you're new here, what this video is my horror reading recommendations. I took last year off to study the long misunderstood and disrespected werewolf, and everything I did last year had to do with werewolves. I only read werewolf books and I only watched werewolf movies, which means that my TBR pile got out of control with both new releases and old books, because your girl's got a problem with buying secondhand paperbacks, especially older ones from the 70s and 80s. I have a ton. So what I've been doing is this year I've been going through my TBR pile, chipping away at it, not making as much progress as I'd like, if we're being honest, but I've got some things to recommend. And it's cool that we're doing this because a lot of reviewers only want to talk about new releases, which is good. Get the word out, talk about the books, get the interest up, and sell the books. But, sometimes these books had a good release and they sit for a couple years and then they're forgotten. And with me being pokey and taking things at my own old lady pace, that means we're still talking about stuff after the initial blush of new release has faded. So yeah, hi, welcome. This video is a month late. I do apologize for those of you that care. For those of you that don't, hi, welcome anyway. The month of September happened. And that's okay. We're out of it now. It is now October 2nd, the day I am recording this. Who knows when it'll get posted. But the good news is I have books to recommend. And the reading was good this time. There were a couple stinkers, some that didn't work for me. And again, if you're new here, I only want to talk about the books that I would personally recommend. I don't want to trash on another author, because art is subjective, and something that didn't work for me may have been somebody else's favorite book. So I'm not going to be negative. Having said that, there is a book on this recommended list for this quarter that I did not like, and I'm going to recommend anyway, because I need someone else to read it so we can talk about it. So with that all being said, let's get into it. So the first book on this list is Demons in My Bloodstream by Candace Nola. And Candace Nola has been all over my TBR this year. I love Candace. I love her as a person. She is such a positive force in the horror genre. And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of positive forces, but not with as much reach as Candace has, and not with the astounding work ethic that Candace has. Her release schedule, the amount of books that she puts out, along with all of the other stuff she does, the woman does not sleep. So Demons in My Bloodstream is a short story collection, and it's not themed in any sort of way. It's all over the place. And if you've ever read Candace, she is a genre jumper. She goes all over the place. Not all over different genres, but within the horror genre. There are tons of subgenres within horror, and she kind of goes through all of them. She can be extreme, she can be splatterpunk, but she can also be a little more quiet, a little more suspenseful in her writing. And I think Demons in My Bloodstream, it showcases a little more of her extreme and splatterpunky sides. And even if you're someone who's not into the extreme horror, you still may like Candace's stuff, because it's the ideas that are showcased in this book. I think some of the best writers out there tend to do the best short fiction. If you have a writer who can do short fiction extremely well, they have their goofiest ideas just on display and they really go for it, their longer stuff tends to be some of the best as well. And I think that's where Candace lands. There are there's mafia stories, there's alien stories, there's all kinds of crazy stuff in this book, and I enjoyed every second of it. The next book is called Black Death by R. Karl Largent. And I 100% bought this book secondhand because of the craptastic cover. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the original cover when I put it up on here, but if I do, you'll understand why I saw it and was like, what is this? And this book, it is a paperback. It is a horror paperback. When you think of what your stereotypical horror paperback is, they can sometimes be as craptastic as their covers, and sometimes they're just kind of low-key awesome. And this one is that. So this book is about a disease. It's called the Black Death. And it is a fast-acting, just completely 100% fatal disease. It leaves people as kind of like greasy, flaking piles of almost ash. And it's this small town and the people within it trying to, first of all, figure out what it is, where it came from, and how to survive it. And I hated the ending of this book. It just did not work for me, but the rest of it I really liked. Like, we're not talking high-minded horror or anything here, but I was completely captivated. I was interested the whole time. And I really liked the writing. There's a lot of descriptiveness in it. And maybe even if I didn't necessarily love all the characters, that's not always a bad thing. Not everybody needs to be the super Boy Scout. You know, sometimes they can be a nebulous character, and watching them try to navigate a hard situation is interesting. And you're going to get that in this book. The next book is I Think I'm Alone Now by Seay. I hope I'm saying that right. I 100% bought this because of the cover. This is a newer release. I can't say too much about this book because I went and I looked at all of the promo that Allie did for this book. And there's there's a twist in this book. I can't say what it's about because what it's about is the twist. So I don't want to give anything away except to tell you there's a twist. You're going to be confused, or maybe left in the dark is a better word, until about 2/3 of the way through this book. It's a very short book. About 2/3 of the way, there's going to be you'll realize that the telling of this book is a flashback, and you're brought to the present, and there's a situation. It's very short, and you're like, oh, okay. But I don't want to ruin it for you because, again, it looked like all the promo was kind of playing coy with what this is, and I don't want to ruin it. What I will say is I was shocked by how fast this moved. With a short book, you want that, but even I was like, whoa, we're starting right off, aren't we? There's a lot of very brutal scenes in this book. A lot of just really over-the-top violence. A lot of really over-the-top violent thinking as well. Definitely worth your time. Short read, awesome cover. Check it out. The next is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. I grabbed this, again, because of the cover. Covers work, you guys. Great covers will sell a book, but I also love that title, Nothing But Blackened Teeth. And I do not read like Goodreads reviews of books before I read them because I don't want to be influenced. That isn't to say I think everybody needs to be like me. Don't be like me. But I usually don't. If I'm trying to decide if I want a book, I might look at the overall star rating to help me decide. But I'd already bought this book, and I was going to add it to my Goodreads list, and I noticed it had only something like 2 stars. And I was like, well, that's weird. And because of that, I did glance through. And let me tell you, I think that's kind of unfair. So this is a haunted house story. And if you have been on this channel for any amount of time, you know I love haunted house stories. I know this is the werewolf channel, but my absolute favorite horror trope is haunted houses. I love them. I think they're great. I love how there's so much variety you can get from a haunted house story besides just it being spooky ghost. It can go all kinds of ways. And when they're done well, it just makes my heart so happy. And this one was done well. This isn't your average, like Victorian haunted house. This is actually a Japanese haunted house. And it's the differences in cultures between Western culture and East Asian culture maybe is what tripped up some people, but I found it fascinating. I found the scenery fascinating. I found the things that were meant to be disturbing as highly effective. I thought this was a great book. It starts off a little slow, but once it starts moving, it happens really fast. Everything happens really fast, and then it's just over. And I loved all of it. I don't think it was deserving of that 2-star review. I'm recommending it in the hopes that other people will review it and give it a few more stars because I thought this was very good. The next one is A Nice Place to Live. This is the one. This is the one that I hated this book, and yet I was also delighted by the story. I couldn't put it down, and even while I was raging at some of the bad parts of it, I could not stop. This was, normally I hesitate to do a DNF on a book, and DNF means do not finish, or did not finish. I hesitate to do that just because I have read books where the ending saved it. The ending saved a book that was otherwise a bit of a trudge to get through. This one is not the case. I hated all of it. And if you've been here before, you know, I do try not to wear my writer hat when I'm reading stories written by other people, because who the hell am I? That's really important to me, that I'm not, when I'm reading something, I'm doing it just for the funsies. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not trying to be, well, I would have done it like this. I don't want to be that guy. But I kind of couldn't have helped it in some instances in this book. There are some parts of this book that are actual garbage, but the story, the idea, Robert Sloane took such a big swing with this, and it's such a ballsy move that I have to respect it. So I'll break it down real short. Trolls in Long Island. They're not like out trolls. We're not talking about like Finnish trolls where they're these giant things that blend into mountains. No, they're in disguise. They're able to kind of whiz bang people so they can't quite tell what they are. But the concept is so ass crazy that I wanted better for this book. I wanted better for this concept. And even though I hated this book, I need someone else to read it and then talk to me about it so we can talk about the ways it could have been better, the ways it was already great. I mean, despite hating it, I could talk about this all day. So if you can find it, check it out. Nothing but, no. A Nice Place to Live. What's next? Okay. The Everywhere House by Mary San Giovanni. Now, this book is currently only available as a limited edition through Thunderstorm Books. And with everything written down below, I'll put the link so you can find it if you're interested. First of all, the cover on this. Oh my God, it's so gorgeous. I know, because Mary is a dear friend, I know that this book is currently on a journey to get wider release. And when it does, if you are not interested in a limited edition book, limited edition book, if you're not interested and you just want a mass release copy, it will happen. This is also a haunted house book, but in the way that Mary would do. If you're familiar at all with Mary San Giovanni, you know she loves her cosmic horror. You know she loves her alternate dimensions, parallel dimensions, ancient beings, things like that. And this is that? It is haunted house, but haunted by multiple dimensions, by interdimensional beings, and time is constantly in flux in this house. And the situations and the visuals are so captivating in this that I can't imagine this isn't going to make everybody's top 10 yearly list when it gets its wider release. You have to check it out. The next is The Keepsake by Paul Huson. Now I'm saying Huson, you'll see how it's spelled. I hope that's right. This is a book that I read a long time ago. I was a child. I was not old enough to even drive when I read this the first time. And I remembered reading it and went to go pick up my copy, and my copy literally fell apart in my hands. Old paperback. And I went to Brian King in his capacity as owner of Vortex Books and Comics and asked him if he could get me a copy that was still readable. And he was able to find me a copy, and I reread it. And this book was every bit as good as I remembered it, even better. Reading it as an adult, reading it as a mother, I still loved it. Now, Paul Huson, interestingly, writes mostly like occult how-to books. If you want to know how to read tarot cards, how to do certain spreads, what the cards mean, that's your guy. If you look up his works online, that's mostly what it is. It's not a whole lot of fiction, but this book is fabulous. I loved it. It suffers a bit from the main character is a moron. But let me walk that back. Not suffers. When you get to the end, it's okay. The thing is stupid people exist. People who don't know how to handle certain situations, they exist. You can't always have, like I said before, you can't always have the Boy Scout. Well, you can't always have the completely together person either. When we're reading horror, you have to remember horror at its base is an examination of the human creature. We like to insert monsters and horrible situations into life, but what's really interesting about it is seeing how the people react and seeing people who are flawed, who are sometimes difficult to relate to. It's not our best selves, it's our flawed selves trying to get through something that can make the story interesting. So this book is about a couple of documentarians. They're a couple, and they've traveled to Ireland to do a documentary on important structures and places in Ireland. And they find a little stone that looks like it has a face carved into it. And they bring it home because it'll remind them of their time in Ireland. And it turns out it's not just a stone. It is something else. And it is very possessive. And it has big time mommy issues. This book is fantastic. Fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. If you can find a copy, maybe ask Brian Keane to help you find a copy. But if you can find a copy, absolutely recommend this book. I was so happy to see that it held up because they don't always. Books that I read when I was like 13 and now I'm in my 40s, reading them again, they tend to play completely differently. I'm a completely different person than I was back then. And it's nice when I can read them and still be like, oh, this is still so good. I can still feel that part of myself when I was 12 or 13. The next book, I don't know if this will be for everybody, but I read it, and if you're interested, I recommend it. It's a nonfiction book written by a local historian. It's called Witches of Pennsylvania, Occult History and Lore by Thomas White. And I found this fascinating. If you listen to podcasts, if you've ever listened to a podcast put out by Aaron Mahnke, who does lore, he did a podcast series. It has different seasons, but the first season, it's called Unobscured. And the first season is a deep dive, very well researched, well interviewed, of the Salem witch trials. And I have probably listened to that first season at this point 5 times, and I will keep listening to it because I find it completely fascinating, completely amazing. There's talk about the whys, and they don't talk much about ergot poisoning and that. It's more complicated than that. It's more psychological than that. If you listen to podcasts, seek that out. I'll put the info down below. But this, it talks about Pennsylvania witches. We've got the Pennsylvania Dutch here. There is a German tradition of witches that still exists here. Very interesting. But something I also found interesting was, in Massachusetts, when Salem, they had the Puritans. And the Puritans were the people who so heavily persecuted people who didn't fit in. And here in Pennsylvania, because of William Penn, we had the Quakers. And the Quakers tended to be a little more open-minded. So the first official witch trial here in Pennsylvania was actually overseen by William Penn. And it happened a few years before the Salem witch trials. And it was handled completely differently. And there are many stories of witch trials, accusations and stuff like that. And to see how they're handled, on a bureaucratic level, there were still going to be hysterical people going, this happened because of a witch, this happened because you hexed me. But the judges tended to be very different. And if you're at all interested, check this book out. And lastly is a new release. I grabbed it because this person is a dear friend and also one of my publishers. The book is called Yes, I Am a Vampire by Stephen Kozeniewski. And this is both a short story collection and a limited autobiography. It's not a full life autobiography. It's limited to the times these short stories were released. And this book is worth it for the preface alone. I will say that. Worth it for the preface alone. But the autobiography that is placed between all the works, where he explains the thought processes of why he wrote these short stories, what was going on in his life at the time he wrote these short stories, his influences, things like that. Just so interesting. It's the tale of someone who came in to the business bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, naive and excited, and getting their first smack in the face of a hard reality all of us writers have to face. And we all have our stories. Not all of us will tell them. Not all of us will write them down. But Kozeniewski did. And I think it's worth a read, even if you're not an author. This is worth it. There's a lot of zombie fiction. A lot of these short stories are zombie stories. And I've mentioned before, I am an aberrant creature. I do not care for zombies. And even then, I still loved this book. I loved it for the stories that were zombies, the stories that weren't zombies. There's an extraterrestrial story in this book that should be widely read. It should be taught in schools. This book is so good. So yeah, totally recommend. Now that we're through that, this is going to be a little bit longer, but I have to talk to you about something about me. Because again, I am a reader. For the most part of this video, I am a reader. But here, right now, I'm a writer. And I want to talk to you about my new release. So, I have a short story collection that is Halloween themed, that is out now. You can buy an ebook and paperback. It is called Halloween My Way. And that awesome cover was done by Betty Rocksteady. I asked her to make me a cover that looked like an old coloring book. And she totally did it. So for years and years since I've been doing this, I put out a short story for Halloween every year. And I've only made them available in ebook up until now. And I always said when I got to 5, I would put them together in a physical copy and you can buy them as a book. And that's what I've done. We got to 5. Now that's a book. This is a very, this is the only book that I have so far that I put trigger warnings in. Because of that cover, it's very cute. and I love it, and I wanted it very cute, but it's not a children's book. There's very adult things in here, but it's also fun. I really went for fun. I really went for sarcasm. You gotta chuckle reading these stories. And I really hope when celebrating the spooky season, when it starts getting time to cuddle up with a book, you give this a shot. Even though it is a compilation of 5 different stories, plus 2 old blog posts, that you'll... What? We'll have to cut this. Yeah, we're gonna leave that in. I hope that you'll give it a shot. I hope that this will be one of the books that you read for celebrating the season. Now, having said that, the 5th short story that I wrote for this is also available only in ebook, just like the rest of them. You can check it out. It's called Hospitality, available on Amazon for your Kindle. I don't yet have copies of this book to sell from my store. So if you want a paperback copy, if you want an ebook copy, go to Amazon, grab those now. But if you want a signed copy from me, like you buy it from my store, you gotta wait, but watch my social media because I'll announce when they come in. It should be any day now. Amazon's being a little pokier than I usually like, but it should be any day now. So keep an eye on my Instagram, on my Facebook, and I'm also on Blue Sky. Follow me there, and when they come in and I open up the shop for signed copies and also goodie bags, hit me up there. So that'll be it for today. Thank you so much for checking these out. Thank you so much for being here, for commenting, for talking to me about books, because I love talking about books. I love writing books, I love reading books, and I love talking about books. So check these out. The next time you will see me will be the end of December, when I finish up my reading for the year, and hopefully there will be a winter burst of reading that goes on. If not, what the hell. But happy reading, everybody. Happy spooky season, and I'll see you in December. Bye.